Ask if you can hear me okay, but I think that the people across the street can hear me okay. It's wonderful to gather in convention in this diocese of Southwest Florida. It's always a special treat and honor for me. This year, we are particularly honored to have our presiding bishop with us. And I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do want to tell you something on a personal basis, because clearly you can read all about her and her activities and her statements and teachings and books that she's written. But I want you to know that when Mary Ellen was in her final illness and subsequent death in the days that followed, my presiding bishop was my pastor. And I am in constant glad-heartedness about her friendship and leadership for me personally. So I would ask all you good people of Southwest Florida to give our presiding bishop, the Most Reverend Katharine Jefferts Schori, a very warm welcome.
It is on. They just have to turn it up. It is a great joy and privilege to be here with you today. It is on. Okay. Thank you, Deb. Thank you very much. I am grateful for your friendship, and I am especially grateful for your leadership in this place. You have helped this community called the Diocese of Southwest Florida to heal in many, many ways. The whole church. I hope what we can do this afternoon is to have a conversation, and I'm going to say just a little bit about that, and then we can go wherever you would like with that. That word conversation comes from Latin, as many of you will recognize. Con means with, and verso means to turn. When it's first used in English about the year 1300, it means to spend time with, to have dealings with, like you might in the market square outside the cathedral, to be in community with. Today we say to hang out with. It doesn't have the connotation of talking that it does today. So much is it about that kind of living in community that there's a technical term in English common law called criminal conversation. It means adultery. It's spending too much time with the wrong person. Our vocation as Christians is about conversation of that deeper, intimate, community-building kind. That's what everybody in this room is meant to foster, to model, to encourage, to teach in the wider world. To be with others in loving relationships. That word conversion effectively means the same thing. To turn with. When we spend time in that deeper kind of conversation, we are converted toward the one we spend time with. It's the root of prayer. It's the root of Christian community. And it's our vocation. To love God with all we are and have, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. comes out of that residing with, conversing. There are two ways or two places where conversation frequently starts in our tradition. They're tied to the first two creation stories in Genesis. The first one, God creates each day of the week, and at the end of the day it's good. And at the end of the week, God says, after God creates human beings, it is very good. The second story about Adam and Eve and the snake is about what goes wrong in a relationship. Those are retold in a pretty conscious midrash in Jesus' baptismal story. He goes to the Jordan River, goes down into the water, is baptized by his cousin, comes out and he hears the voice saying, "You are my beloved. In you I am well pleased." Good creation, blessed creation, very good creation. And then what does he do? He goes out into the wilderness to be tempted. The conversation in the society around us usually starts in the second story. Who do we expect to meet if we start in the second story? The devil. Temptation. You snake. You miserable sinner, you. But if we start in the first story, who are our conversation partners? Good, beloved, blessed, image of God. Both those stories are true, profoundly true. They're in that order for a very important theological reason. Because we believe that God creates in goodness, blessedness. We don't always use that gift very well. Conversation needs to start in the first story. And hopefully keep turning back to that story when we discover all the ways in which we and our conversation partners fall short. We can teach that in the wider world if we live it. And I think the most important way to live it is to wake up every morning and recognize that God has said to each one of us, "You are my beloved, and in you I am well pleased." It happens at our baptism as well. I think it happens at our creation. So when you're brushing your teeth tomorrow morning, look in the mirror and say, "Good morning, beloved." Good morning, beloved. And then as you go through the day, can you greet your conversation partners in the same way? I dare you. Okay, what would you like to talk about? We have two microphones, and someone will bring you a microphone if you raise your hand. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Good.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Is it on yet? Nope.
Tell you what, I'm going to down here. You tell me your question. You're welcome.
I'm Ann Whitman from St. Dunstan's here in Largo. My question is, many churches today are experiencing a downturn in membership, resulting from a change of status from a parish-sized to mission-sized church. Given this trend, what is the national church's position on the status of mission churches?
me start with the easy ones. We're not a national church. We are a church in 17 different nations. If you want to talk about the whole of the church, probably a more helpful term is church-wide, or the general church. Churches change size for a whole lot of reasons. I don't think you can point to the change in status as causing shrinkage. Change in status is usually a result of shrinkage in numbers of members. As a whole church, we are aware of a number of reasons why congregational size goes down. The community changes. We bury more Episcopalians than are born and baptized into our midst. And believe me, Episcopalians don't produce children at the rate they used to. They don't. I think our fertility rate is below replacement. I'm quite serious, because people think it's only because we've done something wrong that the numbers are going down. The society around us, particularly in younger generations, is not joining things in the way it used to. It used to be socially expected that you belonged to a church, or at the very least a faith community. That's no longer generally true, even in the South. Even in the South. My sense is that Episcopalians who are in the church today, like those gathered here, are here because you're committed to something. You're committed to relationship with God and Jesus. You're serious about it. It's not simply part of living in this town. Good. That probably means that has something to do with the numbers. People who belonged only for social reasons have drifted away. That says something about our evangelism efforts and our practice of building deep and intimate community in congregations. There's several answers about how to grow congregations, and I don't think growth is only important in terms of numbers. It's important in terms of depth of relationship. Let me give you a couple of examples that I know a little more intimately from my time as Bishop of Nevada. There were several congregations in boom and bust mining communities. One of them built a church in 1906. It's got Tiffany windows in it. It's in a town of a few thousand at this point. They took a lot of gold and silver out of the hills around that town. When I was there, the congregation on a normal Sunday had half a dozen, 8, maybe 10 people. On Easter, it might have been 15. But it was a congregation that was ecumenical, because it was the only mainline, it was the only non-Roman Catholic, non-Mormon, non-fundamentalist community in town. So there were Lutherans and Methodists and Presbyterians, and it was a vibrant community. They didn't have a resident priest most of the time I was there, but their ministry in the community was hosting funerals. Hosting funerals for people in the community who weren't Mormon or Roman Catholic or fundamentalist, or a member of any faith community. They built community through attending to people's pastoral needs at the time of death. How many of you live in retirement communities? Do you expect to have a private Sunday school of children? Some of us walk around with that expectation in the back of our heads because it's what we grew up with. But it doesn't make sense everywhere. Who is in your neighborhood? What are the hungers? And in order to find out, we have to be out in the community, engaging people, being in conversation with the people in the grocery store, at the post office, if anybody ever goes to the post office anymore, at the coffee shop, on the golf course, the gas station? Who's there? What are their hungers? And what good news do you have to offer them? When that's going on, communities grow and thrive. Sometimes they also grow in numbers. Yeah, and we have some church-wide staff, particularly Tom Brackett. Some of you in here know about his work, who is helping practitioners in local congregations and dioceses figure out how best to reshape the mission and ministry in a place to fit the context. You're welcome. It's very encouraging.
My question to you is, a few years ago, the Episcopal Church started on the anti-racism movement, and just like your assessment of where we are, how far we've come, and where we're going.
Thank you. Thank you for a wonderfully full question. Well, I'm glad. We need more of it. The Episcopal Church for a couple of decades has been, at least on paper, working hard at anti-racism efforts. Anti-racism training is required under our canons of officers and vestry members and ordinands and leaders of all sorts who are officially designated in this church. It's encouraged for everybody. Does it happen everywhere all the time? No, and it's a challenge. We're going to have a church-wide webcast and conference in Jackson, Mississippi in November called The State of Racism 50 Years Later. The Friday events are going to be webcast.